Joyanne Reed and Jason Johnson talking about the need for healthcare reform.
If we actually have members of Congress who would engage healthcare as an actual issue.
Johnson, the nerve.
Attention is the only thing that matters right now.
He said a whole bunch of nothing. Attention for what? Now, if you are a so-called progressive and you feel so passionately that you have got to endorse him because President Donald J. Trump is on the other side, okay, you know, Rejoice, I can deal with that. But this is what I can't deal with. Get something forward. This rail worker strike that people have forgotten about already, they sold them under the bus. I can't answer why one person gets all of the access and others who sacrifice so much didn't just show up at the last election cycle. But I mean, people who really gave up something. They're committed to their owner donors, they're committed to themselves, and they're committed to the status quo.
This weird moment that we're in where the very people who did so much of the gatekeeping to exclude left politics from the mainstream political sphere, media sphere, are now being called upon to offer explanations for Kamala Harris and Joe Biden's failure. One clip in particular stood out to me, and I wanted to give you a chance to respond to it. It's Joyanne Reed and Jason Johnson talking about the need for healthcare reform. I see you shaking your head, but let's just take a quick look. It's a short clip.
A lot of the people who are falling in love with Luigi Mangione are opposed to regulating the insurance companies.
Yes.
That is how you could actually stop them from taking advantage of us. I think left and right, we agree. The system is broken. Insurance companies are bilking us. United Healthcare is that big for a reason. They're being sued for a reason. But you know, like you said, they'll just replace him with another CEO and keep doing it to you. But regulation would actually fix it. They're against that.
They're against regulation because people don't want to understand that part. They want the catharsis of this one-man action that will supposedly, it's like everyone talking about the anesthesiologist a week ago, like, oh, that changed because of what happened. Probably not. That was a much more complex situation. If there was a general level of understanding about healthcare, if we actually have members of Congress who would engage healthcare as an actual issue, not as just a political ploy to be bounced back and forth, you wouldn't have these kinds of problems. But
all right. Suddenly, because of Luigi Mangione, everyone's talking about healthcare. There's a clip that I saw recently where they're specifically talking about the negative influence of money in politics with respect to healthcare. I saw you shaking your head before we started playing this clip. I think just at the nature of the people who are involved in this conversation. What do you make of this?
Yeah, that's exactly why, and especially Johnson, the nerve, you know, and I did retweet a tweet you put out about the oligarchs. I know you remember all too well how this brother argued me down. I was on MSNBC with Chris Matthews at the time, who was still there, and railing against oligarchs before it was cool to use the word in this country. And he literally was not even engaged in the conversation, but was, you know, we were in two different locations, but he had the nerve to pull up what I had to say in that moment and defend oligarchs, if you can believe that. I mean, if you're not one of them, why the hell are you defending them? But that is what that man did, to the depth. And then the island of misfits, women, girls, whatever the hell he called us at the time. But yeah, that is galling to hear him talk about Medicare for all and how people feel and how engaged, if it wasn't just a political ploy or used for political gain. He's talking about it right now for political gain. He could give less than a damn, because I have not heard him over the years be that champion, use the platform that he has to cement the need for Medicare for all until this moment. It is laughable to see that conversation go on. No, it's sad, really. It's not laughable. It's pretty sad.
I mean, why do you think it's happening? Is it just that it's kind of a popular fad thing because of Luigi Mangione to talk about healthcare? Is it because the Democratic Party's lost so hard that people in good faith are waking up to the idea that they've ignored important policies that are driving the discourse? Is it, you know, do you expect this to have any kind of tail on it, that people like Jason Johnson are going to continue to talk about this issue? I mean, it does sort of expose folks like Jason Johnson to even give a little bit of a hat tip to the fact that Bernie was right, or the left was right, or you were right about oligarchs. He doesn't have to say anything at all. Have you given any thought to why you think there is this openness in this moment?
I think it can be all of the above, Bree. Many things can be true at once. Do I believe that he is some newfound crusader for Medicare for all? Absolutely not. Would I love for him to prove me wrong? Absolutely. Prove me wrong,
Yeah.
Jason Johnson.
Yeah.
Be that crusader. It is what else are they going to talk about? The Democrats got handed magnificently. They got handed to their leave no doubt that the American people were not rolling with the Democrats. What else are they going to talk about? Polling is showing too that younger voters, 18, I think they did 18 to 29, I believe, are split on whether or not they thought the killing was right or wrong, and certainly I am not upholding. I'm a humanitarian, so no, I do not believe that it was right to kill that CO. I think there's something deeper brewing though. Like I am not just looking at some of that polling data as people simply cheering on death. What they are expressing is a resentment toward the system, which unfortunately, this CEO from United Healthcare that was killed is a representation of that. And so while the venom seems to be being directed towards him in some type of celebration, whoever's celebrating this man's killing, it's not right. He's a placeholder for, in my mind, he's a placeholder for the vigorous resentment and pain that people are feeling. And because 18 and 29-year-olds don't necessarily see themselves having a better economic future than their parents and their grandparents, they are caught up in, they're coming of age with COVID and all of those things, not seeing the system work for them in their young lives so far, and then also not seeing the system work for their parents and grandparents and other people that they may love. They are more ready to admit that or show symbolically their frustration with the system. And in that polling, it definitely shows. So no, does a Jason Johnson get that? No, he doesn't get it, but I want him to get it. Yeah, people are talking about this because it is so it's such a visceral uh, it's such a visceral moment that we are in between the loss of the Democrats and then the CEO gets killed. And then they got people like Jason Johnson they got to think back and say, wow, Sanders was right. His team was right. The people on the progressive left were right. But instead of just unequivocally saying that we're right, they have these little nibble conversations around the edges. We are the only industrialized nation on the face of the earth that does not have some type of universal health care. We are a hegemon nation. It makes no sense. United Healthcare and all these other healthcare companies have not just started ripping off the people of this country. They've been ripping off the people of this country. And the media class has gone along with it, calling us crazy and extreme and all other kinds of names. As you know, you were in the heart of that fight in 2020. So, Bridget, I do hope that people like him and others have come to that conclusion and that they will use their platform beyond talking about what Luigi, because Luigi has certainly shaken this. His action has made this debate more tangible, like people can feel it and touch it and see it in ways that sometimes we kind of forget that millions of people are either underinsured or underinsured, that 68,000 people die every single year because they don't have health care, that medical debt is the number one reason why people go into bankruptcy, and that we have a system that politicians are owned and paid for by the healthcare industry, the pharmaceutical industry, and paid to keep people sick. We sometimes we
Yeah.
forget that. And so what Luigi did, unfortunately, in the killing of that CEO is brought it in living color. If it was in black and white, it's very vivid right now.
Yeah, well, people forget it precisely because campaigns like Bernie's are run off the platform. They're attacked and destroyed by the Democratic Party.
Yes.
Candidates who champion these issues are primaried out of existence. And
And
mainstream
ridiculed.
media shows and
Yeah.
ridiculed, and mainstream media shows would prefer not to have someone like you or someone like me
You. Yeah.
on to actually talk about these kinds of issues. And so I'm glad you brought up that poll that came out recently. that asked, do you think the actions of the killer Luigi Mangione of the United Healthcare CEO are acceptable or unacceptable? And people have been using the results of that poll to make different kinds of points. I just want to start by pointing out that the framing of that, I think, would lead many people who find the behavior of the healthcare industry, the health insurance industry of Brian Thompson to be unacceptable, but still oppose murder in the street to say, I think it's unacceptable, but that does not really get to the core of the issue of why you might sort of shrug your shoulders at this guy's murder or understand why Luigi has become a folk hero of sorts. The question, I think, is a little bit skewed. But despite that,
Yeah.
despite the question kind of setting up the average person as saying, well, yeah, obviously I don't think murder is wrong, but still 41% of people aged 18 to 29 said, yes, it is acceptable. And I think that really gets to the heart of exactly how angry people are about this healthcare issue, which has been completely erased from our political sphere because the Democratic Party is a captured party that is unwilling to embrace it. Excuse me, embrace it. Now, that being said, uh, even if the acknowledgement of Bernie isn't vociferous, we are living in a moment where there is, I think, a much greater willingness to acknowledge that someone like AOC, some of the younger squad members have a talent that the Democratic Party should be harnessing and that they aren't harnessing. And the fact that AOC just lost her effort to head the Oversight Committee in lieu of this 70-something year person who is also dying of cancer really spotlights the Democratic Party's unwillingness to get out of its own way. I want to play a clip from Pod Save America discussing AOC's potential role in the party and get your reaction.
Bridget, before we go there, I want to say
Please.
thank you for reading the exact verbiage of that poll. And most of those younger people who are in that poll, they don't know Brian Thompson. And that's why I really want to make my point even finer, that he is a substitution for the system in that moment. So your point is, well, I don't believe that many people are cheering on, his depth, this raw, good, glad you killed him. He is a symbol for all that is wrong within the healthcare system itself, which causes people to react in the way that they are reacting. And I, again, want to be very clear. I do not believe that he deserved to die. I also don't believe that people in this country deserve the healthcare system that they have. Those two things go hand in hand. And hopefully, this is a wake up call for elected officials, for the people of this country, and for folks in that industry. We can have a different way. That man should not have had to die. He shouldn't have died. I mean, he didn't die of natural causes. He was killed point blank. We got to deal with that as a society. And we have to deal with a healthcare system that is commodified, that does not care about the lives of millions of people in this country every single day. And those younger people were just not afraid to be very honest about how they felt given the question. And you're right, the question does drive the type of answer that you get. So thank you for reading that question,
Yeah, and I
Bridget.
think the numbers would be even higher if the question were phrased even a little bit more
Yes,
sensitively to the fact that most people
since
think murder is wrong.
that's
Yes.
right. That's right.
Yeah. I think that's all right and a really good point. I would go even farther and say it's because of the unwillingness to have any sort of political outlet, any kind of political response, any like political acknowledgement of the problem within either party that this assassination became an inevitability. There
Yeah.
needed to be some sort of an escape valve for the public discontent. And to the extent that you don't want assassinations like this to happen, the way that so many CEOs and billionaires are now scrambling, it was reported that there's all of this interest in security firms and security stocks going up because of this assassination. And my worry is that the response is for the very, very rich to wall themselves up even further from society as opposed to actually addressing the underlying problem. Now, to the extent that
That's
there are
right.
some people who maybe are interested in having that conversation, I think the locus of like who is the future of the Democratic Party is on AOC. So let me play this clip and then we can get into
Sure.
this question of pushing the party left.
I think there is some angst among a lot of House Democrats that I think is quite misplaced, where, I think they're like, oh, squad, unpopular with the broader electorate, DSA, all that kind of stuff. I would say that AOC, particularly over the last several years, I'm not going to say she has moderated her message or anything like that, because I do not think that, but I think she has been very smart, especially in recent years, on which battles to pick, how to talk to voters, open to people who have different opinions. I think that she's very, very thoughtful. And she's really, I was always impressed with her, but she's impressed me even more the longer she's been in Congress. So that's number one. Number two, I think from her perspective, whether she's the top Democrat on oversight or not, she's going to get heard, right? AOC, there can be fucking 5 hours of hearings on C-SPAN that no one will ever see. And if AOC picks up her phone and does an Instagram live, she's going to reach more people. And she's still going to be on oversight, right? Because she was on oversight before. And if they're fucking smart, Jerry Connolly and others on oversight, during these hearings, she'll be given plenty of time to speak. So that'll be okay. What really bothers me about it, right, is that this gets to your point. It reveals a mindset among Democrats that they are missing, that attention is the only thing that matters right now. Or not the only thing that matters, but attention is the first thing that matters. Because if you cannot get attention in this media environment, your message cannot be heard. And if your message cannot be heard, you cannot persuade people. If you can't persuade people, you can't win. If you can't win, you can't govern. So I think that the Democratic Party has still not figured out how important it is to get attention and what is required to get attention. And even if you're a more moderate member, what's required to get attention is not, I'm sure some of them think, just yelling and screaming about Republicans and showing the most outrage and this or that. Look, it's tough. You got to be creative. You got to talk like a normal fucking human being and not like a politician who's been there for 40 years. And by the way, I don't just want to make it an age thing. There's old politicians who know how to communicate. There's young politicians.
Bernie is an example.
And there's plenty of young politicians who are unbelievably boring and do not. just to be very honest. So it's not necessarily about age. But everyone needs to know that if you cannot get attention, and attention is not putting out your press releases and giving your board press conference and doing something at the whatever, then you're just not going to be heard and we're just not going to win.
Okay. AOC, they say she's an attention getter. They're frustrated that she wasn't allowed to be chair of this committee, but they say she's still out there and they have some faith in her as the future of the party. There's even an acknowledgement that Bernie, despite his age, is also a good attention getter who knows how to message and talk to people. Is it about attention? What do you take away from that clip?
I'm dizzy right now. It took everything I had to finish listening to it out of respect for you and the fact that you played the clip. In my head, what is he saying? What the hell is he talking about? That's what's in my brain right now. He said a whole bunch of nothing. Attention for what is my question. To what extent is the person seeking to get attention for? And that's ally or foe, friend or foe. What are you seeking to get attention for? Just because somebody can, has a million followers on Twitter or can, do a live and hundreds or thousands of people watch, what are they watching for? What is the end goal? And I surmise that the squad, the Congressional Progressive Caucus, with a few exceptions, because there are some individuals in both of those caucuses who have stood up spectacularly for the people. When I subtract them, those two entities had plenty of opportunity over the course of the Biden-Harris administration to get a whole lot of damn attention. That is attention to change material conditions for the people in this country. They did not leverage their power. They did not make any demands. All they did was write press releases and get attention, but nothing got moved and nothing got done. The federal minimum wage did not go up. They did not do that. This rail worker strike that people have forgotten about already, they sold them under the bus with a few exceptions. There are some members of Congress that voted against that, but others made excuses, including Ocasio-Cortez, the congresswoman, about why they're going to vote against what the rail workers need when those people were simply only trying to get days off. For what? What are you doing? Listen, you endorsed, Bridger, they endorsed President Biden, and I'm talking about way before he was kicked out because he didn't get out. He was pushed out. Hello. And if progressives had tried to push him out, they would be calling us every name under the book. But I digress. I'm going to put that back in the parking lot. The man was pushed out. Let's be honest. He was pushed out. He shouldn't have never ran again, but he decided to, and he was pushed out. Now, if you are a so-called progressive and you feel so passionately that you have got to endorse him because President Donald J. Trump is on the other side, okay, you know, Rejoice, I can deal with that. But this is what I can't deal with. Get something for it. If it had been me, I would have said not a hair on the head of Congress members Bush or Bowman better be touched. You want me to swallow hard? You want me to get out there and stump for you and get my base to see Trump as the worst, is the second coming of Satan himself? I tell you what, I need some things. Here's my list. The top two things on my list is Bowman and Bush better. They better return to Congress. See, that's how you leverage power. But they didn't do any of that. They didn't do it. The squad didn't do it. My senator didn't do it. He didn't do it. This is how they don't understand how to use power and how to use leverage. And guess what? Those two members were not only attacked, they were attacked mercilessly by dark money groups, particularly AIPAC, that declared war, that constantly declares war on not just progressives, but Black progressives. And I'm one of them. And the Black Caucus sat back and let it happen. The Congressional Progressive Caucus sat back and let it happen. And some members of the squad let it happen. I don't want to hear nothing about they donated, they stumped. They did not pick up the phone and call President Joseph R. Biden and said, I will swallow hard. I will get out there and stump for you. But here's my list. They didn't do any of those things. They just gave it. And then you have Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez on the stage at the DNC who said that the vice president, and this is not verbatim, but basically something like she working night and day or working hard or not
Tirelessly.
Tirelessly.
Working
Thank you,
tirelessly.
Rejoice.
Yep.
Come on now.
Yep.
Come on, we couldn't even get a vetted Palestinian, somebody that they picked, speech that they wrote, couldn't even go on the stage. The Jewish family that spoke had more love and compassion for the Palestinian people than the Democratic Party did. See, Bridget, that's the stuff I'm talking about. That is what is missing, and that is another reason why they didn't want me there. See, it was power if you don't leverage that power. If you don't make a demand, you just got to let the chips fall where they may on certain things. Those two things would have been on my list. I would have had some others, but those two, oh, my members coming back. My squad members coming back. My Congressional Progressive Caucus members are coming back. My Black Caucus members are coming back. Or is no dice.
Senator Turner, you alluded to the idea that they didn't want you there. Can you unpack that? What kind of pushback have you gotten? Did you, were you disinvited? Were you unable to get an invitation to the DNC? Have you had any contact with, Bernie or anybody else?
I was 8 years a member of the DNC. I just finished my last term at this convention. So let me go back. When I say they didn't want me there, I mean the Congress as a whole. Why I was stopped in 21. I'm sorry, because you're right, because we got listeners who might not know what happened in 21 and 22. But that is why these forces fought so hard to make sure that somebody like me didn't get there. Because I know how to make a demand. I know how to leverage power. And going back to what the podcast America person was saying, which was of nothing. If it's about getting attention for a purpose, I can do all of those things very masterfully. So to have somebody like me to compliment a Bush or to compliment a Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, who has been just, they didn't want any of that. So they had to stop me at the beginning. Not even let me there. But now going back to the DNC, though, you asked me a question.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm a member of was a member. My term, I was 8 years in. The chairman that put me there in Ohio is no longer the chairman of the Ohio Democratic Party. My Ohio Democratic Party, they decided, not to renew my membership, which is fine with me. I didn't want to be renewed, but they did it in such a cowardice way. Not even pick up the phone. Me and another member of my caucus from Greater Cleveland, who is not even not progressive like me, definitely is loved being a member of the DNC, not so much as a phone call because they're cowards. And now we see what happened in Ohio. So the ripple effect from the national to states like mine in Ohio, where we have a do nothing state party that doesn't get it. And we lost Senator Sherrod Brown. They just lost races of Republicans in my state, our state, as you know, have a super majority. People don't even remember that Ohio was a swing state. But that's how a lot of these state parties roll. They ask no questions. They do exactly what the national wants them to do. And so even having people like me in play, even as a member of the DNC, is also a bridge too far as well. And let me throw out the college Dems as well, who took a principled stand, Bree Joy, as you know, while we're on it, and how the nationals even pushed them away, and how you have state parties that didn't even try to help the college Dems. They deserved a lot better. They were right on the war, on the genocide. They are still right, and I want to applaud them again publicly for going against the grain of the National Democratic Party and standing up for humanity in the way that countless generations of younger people have done from the Vietnam, from the anti-Vietnam to civil rights movement. You always find multiple generations of people, particularly young people, who have a consciousness, who are willing and do stand up for what is good, for what is right, and for what is just. But the Democratic Party, unless they are done, and there are maybe a couple of state parties that get it, where you have state chair people who get it, but by and large, most of them just do exactly what they are told.
Hey YouTube, thanks for watching. Just a reminder that this is a podcast. You can catch an extra premium episode every Monday for $5 a month at patreon.com/badfaithpodcast. That's patreon.com/badfaithpodcast for $5 a month, an extra episode every week. Additionally, please do consider liking this video, subscribing to this channel. It helps us out. It helps independent media beat the algorithm. We appreciate you. And as always, keep the faith.